I'm Jake. My group members are Bryce, Noah, and Sophie, and we are predicting content success on Netflix using machine learning. Obviously, our organization of interest is Netflix. They are a global streaming platform. They produce and license movies and TV shows. Most of their revenue comes from their subscription-based service, and a few of their competitors that you've probably heard of are Disney Plus and Amazon Prime. Most of their investment is in original content of their own. The business problem that we are finding is Netflix must decide what content to produce and acquire. This has big impact to them because they invest a lot of money into content production. So poor content decisions can lead to low viewership and wasted budget. Unsuccessful titles may reduce subscriber growth and retention, but strong content choices increase engagement and platform usage. So our goal is to predict which content performs the best for Netflix.
All right, so I'm Noah, and to start off with data preparations and features, we ended up using two different data sets for our modeling. One from Netflix, which included a bunch of their titles, the different genres, their release year, and their own like Netflix rating. And then we ended up using an IMDb data set to use its audience ratings to end up defining our success variable. So that success variable ended up being an IMDb rating of greater than or equal to 7. And some of the key features we ended up using in our modeling is the release year, content rating, the genre information, the year it was added to Netflix. And so both of these two data sets were cleaned and then merged together to have like one cohesive data set for our modeling. All right, and then some of the challenges and limitations. One of the biggest things was we ended up having a lot of just missing IMDb, the audience ratings for some of the Netflix content. So this ended up reducing the size of our data set a pretty good amount for the modeling. And then outside of that, there was a huge class imbalance. So there were significantly more unsuccessful titles according to our success variable than successful ones. So there was just a huge imbalance with what the model was having to take a look at in terms of defining what was successful and what wasn't. And some other limited features was there's a lot more that can go into predicting the success of content that's being released outside of just the data we had. So a couple we mentioned here is we had no marketing data, which marketing plays a huge role in how, especially like it plays a huge role in the initial success of how content will perform on different streaming platforms. And then with that, we also didn't have specific engagement data for Netflix. All right, so model one, the random forest classifier. This model combines multiple decision trees to then improve its prediction accuracy for a lot of these like complex different relationships in the data set. And so the reason we chose this model is because it does handle those complex relationships well. And it's also uh, good at reducing overfitting, especially with our imbalanced data set. This model still handled that unsuccess and successful imbalance fairly well. So overall, its performance, it had an accuracy of about 75% with a very high recall for those unsuccessful titles. But due to that like imbalance that I keep mentioning, it has a lower recall for successful titles. So it's very good at predicting failures, but when it comes to predicting or even just identifying successful content, it's not as accurate.
Looking at our second model, we used a logistic regression. This model estimates the probability that a title will be successful and then classifies it whether as successful or not successful. We chose logistic regression because it is simple, interpretable, and useful as a benchmark against more complex models. In terms of importance, it achieved about 74% accuracy, which is slightly lower than the random forest. However, it did a better job identifying successful titles, which is especially important for our business goal since Netflix wants to spot potential hits early. This model is more balanced and more useful in practice, even if it is not the top part performer on overall accuracy alone. Comparing these two, The random forest had slightly higher overall accuracy, which means it was better at correct predictions across the full dataset. However, its biggest weakness was that it struggled to identify successful titles. Logistic regression had slightly lower accuracy, but it performed better when it came to recognizing successful content, which is the outcome we care most about. This makes logistic regression more aligned with business objective of predicting which titles are likely to succeed. So while random forest may look stronger at first glance, logistic regression actually provides more practical value because it is better at finding the titles with real breakout potential. Now, looking at key insight and business recommendations off of these models, one of the biggest takeaways from this project is that content success is difficult to predict, especially using limited data. The model suggests that some patterns they do exist, but those patterns are not strong enough yet to make highly confident predictions. We also found that predicting successful content is a lot harder than predicting failure. This is due because hit content depends on many factors that are harder to measure. Based on this, our recommendation is to use these models as decision support tools rather than decision makers. Netflix should prioritize models that help identify possible hit titles, but those insights should be combined with human judgment, market knowledge, and creative evaluation before making any final investment decisions, and not just off the models alone.
So before wrapping up, we wanted to touch on some ethical considerations. Since this model is designed to predict content success, it could influence what kind of shows or movies actually get created. That might limit creativity or reduce diversity if companies rely too heavily on data instead of new ideas. There's also the issue of fairness. Because the data we use might be biased or incomplete, the model could favor certain types of content while overlooking others. Lastly, responsibility is really important. Decision makers at Netflix need to understand that this model isn't perfect and it should be used as a tool to support decisions, not replace human judgment. To conclude, predicting content success is really complex and not 100% reliable. While our models, especially logistic regression, provided useful insights, they can't fully capture what makes something popular. Overall, the model is helpful for guiding decisions, but it shouldn't be the only factor. Future improvements would depend on having more detailed and higher quality data. So basically, data can point Netflix in the right direction, but creativity and human insight should still play a huge role. For this project, we used a Netflix dataset from Kaggle that included things like genre, release year, and ratings. We also used IMDb data to capture audience reception. Then we supported our analysis with a few research articles that discuss how machine learning and data analytics are used in content decisions. These sources helped provide content and support for our findings. And that's everything. Thank you guys for listening.